in this lesson I want to talk about the different kind of minor scales that there are, and that how we can use them over a minor tune. So I picked the standard Alone Together, great tune, and so it's a minor tune, so we need to know our minor scales, right? And before we get into the minor scales, I should mention that it's not necessarily the best way to practice improvising over this tune. Chord tones, arpeggios, triads, pentatonics. There are many ways that you can practice improvisation over a standard. But I picked this tune because it has a minor tonality. The key center is minor. So first off, let's look at the different types of minor scales that we have. I would say that there are 4. Some of you might disagree, but there are basically 4 minor scales in my opinion. And the first one is obviously the minor scale, the natural minor scale, also known as the Aeolian. So D, natural minor. It's very sad and, you know, it has a certain vibe to it. Next is the Dorian scale, which is, you know, raising the 6th degree to a B natural. Already there's a completely different vibe, right? Okay, so some of you might argue that it's the same scale, the natural minor and the Dorian, just starting on different degrees, but depending on how you look at it. The harmonic minor is the next one, and that's a totally different scale. It's constructed differently. So we take a natural minor and we raise the 7th degree, I guess it is. I tend to look at this scale in a specific way, but I'll get to that later on. The 4th is melodic minor, which is, it has both the 7th, the 6th and the 7th degree raised. Some people call it the jazz minor, and some people laugh at that. I mean, as if there was a scale that sounds like jazz. But I think it's something that Berkeley came up with, I think, to separate it from... Classical musicians tend to play it differently, ascending from descending, so... But in jazz, you think of it as the same in both directions. So... First of all, it's very important to get to know these scales so that you can hear them, sing them, and recognize them, which one is which, if you hear them, and you get to know that each has its own sound, if you will. And you can create different types of chords from these scales, obviously. So, how do we know which scale to choose when we're playing over a tune like Alone Together, if we're going to approach it from a scale kind of point of view? So let's look at the first 4 bars, right? So is what the chord chart says. D minor, E split, A7 flat 9, D minor. Okay, so a lot of books will tell you. I remember when I started playing, I looked at jazz books like Ebersold's and what have you, and it would tell you, okay, you're supposed to play D Dorian over the D. For some reason, it's Dorian. And E Locrian over the E minor 7 flat 5, and A altered over the A7. And if the tune is like, how are you supposed to, there's no time to play these scales. So scratch that. I would say that's wrong. So first of all, we need to figure out what style are we playing this tune in. So a traditional way, like an old or early jazz, would be to maybe play D and the chords like that. So then you can play some kind of D minor scale over the D and some kind of A dominant scale over the A. It's very important that you understand the difference between when a minor chord is a tonic, as in this case, or when it's a 2 chord or a subdominant. So if I'm playing in D minor, this chord is a tonic. So the seventh, the seventh degree, minor 7, is not necessarily the best color for that chord or extension, because that sounds like a subdominant, like a 2/5. Right? Because the subdominant, you want this thing. But when you have a tonic, the 6th degree sounds more home, kind of. Or even the major 7. It sounds like a resolution, right? So when you hear early jazz players like Django, they play the 6th, major 6th all the time. But when the minor chord is a 2 chord in a 2-5-1, that's when you play a 7th, and that's where you play the Dorian. So that's why I don't think the Dorian scale is the first choice of scales. Because look at the tune; it's in D minor. It has 1 flat, right? So I would say the most traditional way to solo over this is to think of this as D minor. And then you ignore the E minor 7 flat 5 and just think A7 for a bar, and you play a D harmonic minor starting on A. So, because the D harmonic minor scale to me sounds more like some kind of dominant scale, like an A. Okay. So I'll play a little bit, and I'm gonna alternate between D minor and A. Phrygian dominant is the best name for this scale. Somebody pointed out to me I should call it A Phrygian dominant, which is D harmonic minor starting on A. So I'll play and see, so you hear what it sounds like. So D minor. Okay, so D minor. And now here was a D7, right? So we're treating this as G harmonic minor or D Phrygian dominant. And we're in G minor. And now you're saying, well, the G minor is a subdominant, right, in the key of D minor. So we should play Dorian there. Yep. But because there is a dominant before it, the D7 is a dominant to G minor, we're kind of making it sound like a tonic for a second. We're kind of modulating to G minor for a second. So you can play different scales over the G in this case. 2. I hope that makes some sense. Anytime you have a dominant before a minor chord, you're kind of creating a tonic out of that minor chord. Now, most modern or more contemporary players, they don't play if you're playing with a band, a trio or something, and you know they're cooking, they're just gonna play some kind of D, and the bass player is just kind of, you know, laying the foundation for you to be more free, and the piano player might be playing all this crazy stuff. So for all of those 4 bars, you can just ignore the E minor 7 flat 5 and the A7 and think D. So which one should we pick? Well, the natural minor has what's called a void note in it. That's why a lot of books will tell you to use the Dorian scale, because a void note, which is B flat, sounds wrong over the D. I'll show you. If I focus too much on the B flat, it sounds kind of funny. It's a note that needs to be resolved. But if you're playing in D minor, that note sounds good, right? But it's when you land on it, it sounds wrong. Whereas the B natural is the 13th of that chord, so that note doesn't need to be resolved. But it's kind of a funny note. It sounds kind of out in a way. So I'll show you the difference. So this is a B natural or a Dorian scale. Modern. The B could be derived from the Dorian scale or the melodic minor. So also when you're comping, you can throw in the B in your voicing, right? When you're comping, so and you want to be able to hear if the piano player or whoever is comping for you is doing that. You want to be able to pick up on that. Oh, there's that note. So you could, some of you were saying, why couldn't we play a D minor with a B flat in it? It's a great sound, right? It's a great chord. I think it's because it doesn't sound like D minor anymore. We're kind of leaving the tonality if we do that. It creates a G minor instead. So you could do it. I think it would mess too much with whoever is soloing, if you're comping and you're doing that, unless you agree on some reharm or something. So it's not something that it doesn't really work in my opinion. Now, let's say I play over the A section and I treat the 4 bars of D as a jazz minor or melodic minor. I can play all these arpeggios from that scale, right? It sounds even more melodic, I guess. Jazz minor is a more modern sound, but it's pretty old. I mean, if you listen to contemporary players, they are doing way more advanced stuff, and so it's pretty straightforward. Okay, now let's look at the rest of the tune. The B section is A minor 7 flat 5, D7 to G. So I can again kind of choose to ignore the A minor 7 flat 5 and think of it as a D7 and play the D Phrygian dominant, which is same as G harmonic minor. Then there's a G minor 7 flat 5 to C to major. I can play, I've talked about this in the previous lesson, the harmonic major, so F harmonic major. So if you don't know what that is, you can look at my previous lesson on that. So I'll play over the B section and you'll hear me play D Phrygian dominant over those 2 bars, and then I'm going to play G harmonic major over the 2/5 to Here we go. Be a little bit more advanced, I'll play the modes of the harmonic. Sorry, I always get those confused. That's why I guess it's good to call it jazz minor. The modes of jazz minor over the 2/5 to G. So if I play a C melodic minor over the A minor 7 flat 5, that creates something called the A Locrian natural 2, I guess would be a good name. And then I can play E flat melodic minor over the D, which is D altered, and then G melodic minor over the G. So it's an interesting movement there. You can use that to create how should I say this? You can use that kind of movement of harmony to create the feeling of a 2/5-1 in minor. So I'll show you what it sounds like. another difference between the jazz minor and the harmonic minor is that you can create all these modes from melodic minor, like the altered and the Phrygian flat 7, all that. Whereas the modes from the harmonic minor are a little bit more obscure and not so user-friendly. So that was my take on the different minor scales and how to use them. But again, I think if I were to practice with this tune, I would also play chord tones and arpeggios and triads and stuff like that. So I'll leave you with a little bit of Alone Together with some triadic approach. See you next time.